The evening was quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes after the city has shouted all day and finally grown tired. Cars moved slowly outside, their headlights reflecting on the wet road. Inside a small cafe near the corner of the street, soft music played in the background. This was the kind of place where people came to forget their problems, even if only for a few minutes. Victor, known to many as a mafia boss, pushed the door open and stepped inside. He wore a dark coat and gloves, his face calm, but his eyes carried years of memories and regrets. He did not come here often. Tonight he wanted silence, nothing more. Victor chose a table near the wall and ordered coffee. As he waited, his eyes slowly moved around the room, a habit he never lost. That was when he saw her. At first he thought his mind was playing tricks on him. But no, it was really her. Lily sat near the window, the soft cafe light touching her face. She looked older, more mature, but her smile was the same. Sitting across from her was a man Victor had never seen before. He was tall, well-dressed, and clearly confident. His name, Victor would later learn, was Daniel. Victor felt his chest tighten. He had not seen Lily in years, not since she walked away from his dangerous world. Seeing her now, laughing gently, made time feel like it had stopped. For a moment, Victor considered leaving without being noticed. But fate had other plans. Lily's eyes lifted and they met his. Her smile disappeared instantly. Her face turned pale, and her body stiffened as if she had seen a ghost. "Victor?" she whispered, barely able to say his name. Daniel noticed the change and turned around. "Do you know him?" he asked, his voice polite but cautious. Victor stood up slowly and walked toward their table. Every step felt heavy, like he was walking into his past. "Yes," Victor said calmly. "We know each other." Lily swallowed hard. "This is Daniel," she said, trying to sound normal. "Daniel, this is Victor." Daniel stood up and extended his hand. "Nice to meet you." Victor shook his hand firmly. There was no anger in his grip, only control. He studied Daniel's face. The man did not look afraid, only confused. Victor respected that. He pulled a chair and sat down without being invited. The silence between them felt thick, almost painful. "I didn't expect to see you here," Lily said, her voice shaking slightly. "I could say the same," Victor replied. "Life has a strange way of bringing people back together." Daniel looked from one to the other. "You two were?" he asked carefully. "Once," Victor answered. "A long time ago." The waiter brought Victor's coffee, breaking the tension for a brief moment. Victor took a slow sip, his eyes never leaving Lily. She looked nervous now, playing with her fingers, avoiding his gaze. "You look happy," Victor said quietly. Lily forced a small smile. "I am." Victor nodded, but his heart felt heavy. He noticed how close Daniel sat to Lily, how protective his body language was. This man cared for her. Victor felt something he did not expect, relief mixed with sadness. Then, without planning it, Victor spoke the words that had been buried in his heart for years. "Lily," he said softly, "do you remember the night with my daughter?" The effect was immediate. Lily's face lost all color. Her hands stopped moving. Daniel straightened in his chair, clearly confused. "What night?" he asked. Victor did not look at Daniel. His eyes stayed on Lily. "The night Ava couldn't breathe. The rain. The hospital." Lily's eyes filled with tears. She nodded slowly, unable to speak. Daniel frowned. "I don't understand. What are you talking about?" Victor finally turned to him. "That night," he said, "Lily saved my daughter's life." Daniel's mouth opened slightly, shock written all over his face. "Saved your daughter?" "Yes," Victor replied. "I was not there. I was lost in my own world." Lily stepped in when no one else could. The cafe felt suddenly too small. The soft music, the quiet chatter of other customers, it all faded away. Only the three of them existed in that moment. Lily finally spoke. "Victor, please," she said, her voice breaking. "Not here." Victor nodded slowly. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause pain." He stood up, placing some money on the table. "I just wanted you to know. I never forgot." Daniel looked at Lily, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. "Is this true?" he asked gently. Lily nodded, tears falling freely now. "Yes." Victor took one last look at her. "Take care of yourself, Lily," he said. "And thank you for that night." As Victor turned and walked toward the door, Lily watched him leave, her heart racing. Daniel sat silently, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. Outside, Victor stepped into the cold air, his breath visible. He had not planned this meeting. But some memories refused to stay buried. That night, the past had found him again. That night was not something Victor could ever erase from his memory, no matter how many years passed or how many enemies he faced afterward. It began like any other night in his dangerous life, filled with loud voices, smoke and risky decisions. Victor was away from home, deep in a meeting that mattered to his criminal empire when his phone lost signal. At the same time, miles away, his small apartment was quiet except for the soft breathing of his 6-year-old daughter, Ava, who was sleeping in her room. Lily had stopped by earlier that evening to check on Ava, something she often did even though she and Victor were already drifting apart. Lily was never officially responsible for the child, but her heart would not let her stay away. Close to midnight, Ava woke up gasping for air. Her small chest moved up and down too fast and panic filled her eyes. She tried to call out, but her voice was weak. Lily heard the sound and rushed into the room. The moment she saw Ava struggling to breathe, her heart dropped. She had seen asthma attacks before, but never this severe. Lily searched for the inhaler, but it was empty. She tried calling Victor again and again, but there was no answer. Fear wrapped around her like a tight rope, but she forced herself to stay calm. She picked Ava up, wrapped her in a jacket, and ran out into the rain without even locking the door behind her. The rain was heavy that night, pouring as if the sky itself was breaking. Lily struggled to hail a taxi, her arms shaking as she held Ava close to her chest, whispering words of comfort even though she herself was terrified. Finally, a car stopped, and Lily shouted the address of the nearest hospital. Every second felt like a lifetime. Ava's breathing grew weaker, and Lily could feel her small body trembling. She kept talking to her, telling her stories, promising her that everything would be okay, even though she did not know if that was true. At the hospital, doctors rushed Ava into the emergency room. Lily was pushed aside, left standing alone in a cold hallway under harsh white lights. Her clothes were soaked, her hands shaking, her heart pounding so loudly it felt like it might burst. She sat down on a chair and waited, staring at the door as if her eyes alone could protect the child inside. Hours passed slowly. Lily prayed in silence, making promises to a future she was not sure she would ever have. She blamed herself for everything she could think of, even though she knew it was not her fault. When Victor finally arrived, it was early morning. His suit was wrinkled, his face pale, and his eyes filled with fear he had never allowed anyone to see before. The moment he entered the hospital, he saw Lily asleep on a chair outside the emergency room, her head leaning against the wall, her hand still holding Ava's small shoe. That image hit him harder than any bullet ever could. In that moment, Victor understood something important. Power, money, and fear meant nothing compared to the fragile life of his daughter and the woman who had stepped in when he failed to be there. The doctor later told him that Ava would survive, but only because she had been brought in just in time. Victor thanked the doctor, but his eyes kept returning to Lily. When she woke up and saw Victor standing there, relief and exhaustion washed over her face at the same time. She did not shout or accuse him. She simply stood up and said, "She's going to be okay." Those words broke something inside Victor. He wanted to say thank you, to say sorry, to promise her a safer life, but his world did not allow such promises. That night changed everything between them, even though neither of them spoke about it much afterward. Lily stayed by Ava's side until she was discharged. She fed her, read to her, and held her hand when she woke up scared. Ava grew attached to Lily quickly, calling her by name with a smile that warmed Lily's heart. Victor watched from a distance, feeling both grateful and ashamed. He knew that Lily wanted more than this life of fear and secrecy. He also knew he could not leave his world easily. That silent understanding slowly pushed them apart. Years later, sitting in that cafe, Victor felt the weight of that night pressing on his chest again. After he left Lily and Daniel behind, he walked through the streets with his hands in his coat pockets, his thoughts racing. He did not regret reminding Lily of that night. It was not meant as a threat or a warning. It was a truth that deserved to be acknowledged. That night proved who Lily truly was, and it reminded Victor of the man he could have been if his choices had been different. Back in the cafe, Lily struggled to explain everything to Daniel. She told him about Ava, about the hospital, about how Victor's world scared her but how she could not abandon an innocent child. Daniel listened quietly, his expression serious but not angry. He began to understand that Lily's past was not something dark, but something deeply human. Meanwhile, Victor sat alone in his car, staring at the steering wheel, realizing that some nights never end. They simply wait for the right moment to return and demand to be remembered. After Victor left the cafe, the silence between Lily and Daniel felt heavier than before. The soft music, the clinking of cups, and the quiet conversations around them continued as normal, but their table felt like a different world. Lily took a deep breath, knowing there was no more space for hiding the past. She looked at Daniel, whose face showed confusion, shock, and concern all at once. He was not angry, but he was clearly struggling to understand how a man like Victor and a story like that night fit into the woman he loved. Lily slowly began to explain everything, not in rushed words, but carefully, as if each sentence carried a weight she had held inside her for years. She told Daniel how she met Victor long ago, how she was drawn to his confidence at first, and how she later realized the danger that followed him everywhere. She explained that when Ava entered her life, everything changed. The child was innocent, fragile, and unaware of the darkness surrounding her father's world. Lily spoke about that rainy night at the hospital in detail, about the fear she felt while holding Ava in her arms, and about the moment she realized she could not walk away, no matter how much she wanted a peaceful life. As Lily spoke, tears rolled down her face, not from sadness alone but from relief. For the first time she was telling the full truth without fear of being judged. Daniel listened quietly, his hands resting on the table, his eyes never leaving Lily's face. When she finished, he sat back and let out a long breath. He admitted that the story scared him, but not in the way Lily expected. It scared him because it showed how close Lily had been to losing herself, not because she was weak, but because she was too strong and too caring. He told her that knowing she had saved a child's life did not make him see her differently in a bad way. Instead, it made him respect her more. Lily's shoulders relaxed slightly, but her heart was still racing. She knew there was more to face. Meanwhile, across the city, Victor drove slowly through empty streets, his mind filled with memories he had avoided for years. He thought about Ava, now older, now asking questions he struggled to answer. He thought about Lily's face when he mentioned that night, and about Daniel, who did not look like a man seeking trouble. Victor realized that the secret he had carried was no longer just his. It had entered the lives of others, and that meant responsibility. For the first time in a long while, he questioned whether his silence all these years had truly protected anyone. The next day, Victor met with Grace, his trusted advisor and one of the few people who spoke to him without fear. They sat in his office, sunlight coming through large windows that overlooked the city. Grace noticed immediately that something was different. Victor was quieter, more thoughtful. When he told her about the cafe and about Lily, Grace listened carefully. She did not interrupt, knowing how rare it was for Victor to open up like this. When he finished, she said something simple but powerful. She said that some truths do not destroy lives when they come out. Sometimes they finally allow people to breathe. Later that evening, Lily and Daniel took a walk through a nearby park. The air was cool and the streetlights reflected on the path. Lily felt lighter but also nervous. She feared that the past might still follow them. Daniel held her hand and told her that he did not expect her to erase her past to build a future with him. He only wanted honesty, and now he had it. Lily smiled through tears, realizing how different this love felt compared to the one she had with Victor. It was calmer, safer, and built on trust instead of fear. At the same time, Victor sat at home with Ava, watching her draw pictures on the floor. She showed him a drawing of a woman holding her hand. Victor recognized Lily immediately. Ava said softly that she missed her. That simple sentence hit Victor harder than anything else that day. He realized that the truth had already shaped their lives in ways he could not control. The past was no longer just memory, it was a living part of the present. As night fell, each of them lay awake in different parts of the city, thinking about the same truth from different angles. Lily felt relief and fear mixed together. Daniel felt responsibility and respect. Victor felt regret and gratitude at the same time. That single meeting in the cafe had opened doors that could never be closed again. The secret was no longer hidden, and with that exposure came change. Whether that change would bring peace or pain was still unknown, but one thing was clear. The truth had finally been spoken, and none of their lives would remain the same again. Days passed after that fateful cafe meeting, yet the memory of Victor's words lingered like a shadow over everyone involved. Lily found herself constantly replaying the conversation. The way his calm voice had cut through years of silence and forced her to confront the night that had haunted her, yet had also defined her. Daniel noticed her quiet moments, her eyes often distant, staring into nothing, and gently asked what was on her mind. She told him about the rain, about Ava gasping for air in the middle of the night, and how she had run through puddles holding a child whose life was literally in her hands. As she spoke, Daniel felt both awe and fear, realizing that Lily had been brave in ways he could never imagine. But he also realized that her bravery came with scars, emotional ones she had carried alone, without ever letting anyone see the full weight of her courage. Victor, meanwhile, was no stranger to heavy burdens. In the quiet of his mansion, surrounded by the symbols of his power, expensive suits, rare bottles of whiskey, and walls lined with books he seldom had time to read, he felt something unusual for a man like him: vulnerability. He thought about Ava and how the world he had created for himself was dangerous, not just for him but for everyone he loved. For the first time he considered the consequences of his choices not in terms of profit or control, but in terms of human lives. He remembered Lily that night at the hospital, and he remembered how he had felt powerless in the face of his daughter's suffering. That memory did not anger him, it humbled him. For a man who had spent decades using fear as his weapon, humility was foreign and uncomfortable, yet strangely liberating. Victor knew he could not undo the past, but he could influence the present. He had to make a choice: continue isolating those he cared about from his life, or trust that Lily and Daniel could handle the truth. For years, he had allowed secrecy to protect them, but that protection had come at the cost of honesty and connection. Now, standing at this crossroads, Victor decided to act differently. He reached out to Lily not to reclaim her or disrupt her life, but to acknowledge her bravery and express the gratitude he had carried in silence for years. Their meeting was simple, quiet, and devoid of the tension that had surrounded them in the cafe. No threats, no grudges, just words spoken honestly, like two adults finally recognizing the depth of shared history. Lily listened to Victor, tears running down her cheeks once again, but this time not from fear or guilt. They were tears of release. She realized that forgiveness was not about excusing the past or pretending pain had never existed. It was about acknowledging what had happened, understanding it, and allowing it to coexist with the present. Victor apologized, not for the world he lived in, but for the silence that had caused misunderstandings. He admitted that he had been proud and stubborn, unwilling to let anyone in, and that his own fear of loss had sometimes kept him from protecting the ones he loved. Lily's heart softened further. She knew that while the night with Ava had tested her in ways unimaginable, it had also revealed Victor's humanity, something few people ever got to see. Daniel watched this interaction quietly, initially uncomfortable with the idea of forgiveness involving someone as dangerous as Victor. But as he observed the way Victor spoke, the respect in his eyes, and the honesty in his tone, Daniel began to understand that people were more than the roles they played in the world. Victor was a mafia boss, yes, but he was also a father capable of deep emotion, loyalty, and regret. Daniel realized that trust and respect did not require forgetting the past. They required acknowledging it fully. He put a hand on Lily's shoulder, silently offering his support. In that moment, Lily felt the weight of her fears lift slightly. She had carried so much alone for years, but now, with Daniel by her side and Victor's words acknowledged, she began to believe that healing, though slow, was possible. Victor left later that evening, the city lights reflecting off his car windows as he drove through empty streets. He did not feel triumphant or relieved. Instead, he felt something far more complex. He felt the bittersweet knowledge that life did not always allow perfect resolutions. People could forgive, love, and move forward, but scars remained. That was part of being human, part of surviving a life that demanded sacrifices in every form. Yet, for the first time in a long time, Victor allowed himself to hope. Hope that Lily could find happiness with Daniel, hope that Ava could grow up safely, and hope that he, despite his world of danger, could still contribute to that happiness. Back at home, Ava showed Victor a drawing she had made during the day. It was a simple picture of a woman holding hands with a little girl. Victor recognized Lily immediately, and he realized that even a child could sense the depth of truth and bravery that had existed in that rainy hospital night. He smiled faintly, pressing a kiss to Ava's forehead. In that quiet moment, surrounded by innocence and love, Victor understood that choices, forgiveness, and honesty were far more powerful than fear, revenge, or control. That realization did not erase his past, but it allowed him to carry it with dignity, and for the first time he felt the possibility of peace threading through his life. The night, the cafe, and the conversations had all done something unexpected. They had not solved every problem or removed every danger from their lives, but they had created a space where honesty could exist without fear. Choices had been made, forgiveness had been extended, and the past, while heavy, no longer dictated every heartbeat. Victor, Lily, Daniel, and even Ava now existed in a fragile balance between what was lost and what could still be built, a balance held together by the courage to speak the truth, the wisdom to accept it, and the willingness to move forward despite the shadows that always lingered. The weeks after the cafe meeting were a delicate dance of emotions, adjustments, and realizations. Victor returned to his world of power, influence, and calculated danger, but something had shifted inside him. The encounter with Lily and the revelations of that night with Ava had stirred feelings he had long suppressed: gratitude, humility, and a sense of responsibility he could not ignore. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to think beyond his empire, beyond the business of fear, and consider the lives of those he loved. He spent hours observing Ava, watching her grow in ways he had almost missed, and seeing the child's trust in Lily had an impact on him that no amount of money or power ever could. He realized that his daughter's life was fragile, precious, and deserving of more than just survival. It deserved love, safety, and stability. Lily, meanwhile, struggled with the aftermath of emotions that had been buried for years. She had faced her own fears when she met Victor again, but confronting the truth had given her a sense of clarity she had not felt before. She spent quiet evenings with Daniel, talking about everything that had happened, reliving moments of the past not to dwell on them, but to understand how those experiences had shaped them. Daniel was patient, never pressuring her, never demanding explanations beyond what she felt ready to share. His respect and calmness allowed Lily to finally breathe, to let go of the guilt she had carried for being both a protector and a survivor in a world she had never fully chosen. Each conversation, each small act of honesty, slowly built a foundation of trust between them, stronger than either had ever imagined. Victor's decision to step back from the situation without interference also set a precedent that none of them could have foreseen. He did not attempt to reclaim Lily or impose himself into her life, nor did he seek to intimidate Daniel. Instead, he sent subtle messages of support and reassurance, small acts that spoke louder than threats or gestures of control. Grace, ever observant, noticed this change in him. She saw the man who had once lived by fear now seeking peace in moments of honesty and connection. She recognized the courage it took for Victor to restrain himself, to allow others to live without his shadow over them, and she understood that this was a turning point not just for him, but for everyone tied to his world. Ava, the innocent thread connecting them all, became a symbol of hope and new beginnings. She asked Victor about Lily regularly, drawing pictures and telling stories that filled the house with laughter and curiosity. Through her eyes, Victor saw the impact of courage and compassion, realizing that true strength was not in controlling people or situations but in protecting and nurturing those who depended on him. He began to make small changes, adjusting his business decisions to minimize risk to his family, spending more time at home, and learning to communicate with Ava not just as a father, but as someone who was capable of listening, understanding, and learning from a child's perspective. For Lily and Daniel, the revelation of the past became a bridge rather than a barrier. The knowledge of the night when Lily saved Ava did not scare Daniel away, it bonded him more deeply to her. He understood the depth of her courage and the sacrifices she had made, and he respected her for it. Together they started building a life based on honesty, love, and mutual support, a life in which the past was acknowledged but did not dictate the future. They explored the city, shared quiet dinners, and spoke about hopes and dreams, all while carrying the knowledge that life could be unpredictable and sometimes dangerous. Victor, Lily, Daniel, and Ava had all faced moments that could have torn them apart. The secrets, the dangers, and the emotional scars. But through truth, choice, and forgiveness, they had created a fragile yet resilient balance. The past remained, but it no longer controlled them. Instead, it informed their decisions, reminding them of what truly mattered. Victor understood that being a father was far more complicated than he had ever imagined, and Lily realized that love often required courage not just in action, but in honesty. Daniel saw the value of patience, understanding, and trust in a world where danger was constant, and Ava, the small, bright spark of innocence, reminded everyone that life's greatest victories were often quiet, hidden in moments of care and connection rather than in grand gestures. As the city continued to move with its usual chaos, they each found ways to live alongside their pasts while embracing the present. Victor drove through empty streets at night, reflecting on the choices that had brought him here and the people he was now determined to protect. Lily walked hand in hand with Daniel, sometimes glancing at the sky and feeling grateful that fear had not won. Ava laughed and played, unaware of the magnitude of her own survival and the lives that had intersected so dramatically because of one terrifying night. In this way they moved forward together yet separately, carrying lessons, memories, and truths that would remain with them forever. They had survived the past, faced their fears, and discovered that even in a world full of shadows, there were moments of light, clarity, and profound human connection. Life would continue to test them, but now they knew that honesty, courage, and love could withstand even the darkest nights.